Hey class, just going to do a quick little um, video kind of going through the slides that we're going to be doing today in class. Um, it's important that you all take notes on this, not only because we need introduction to the terminology of short stories, but also because maybe the next day or two there might be some sort of quick pop-up quiz or something kind of going over some of the stuff that we're going to go through today. So today we're going to break off and just do slides 1 through 9. So I'm going to kind of introduce you all to this. So basically, you see that I'm going to have notes for you all, and you all add the notes that you seem fit. Maybe jot down something that you maybe didn't know or something that I kind of emphasized during the video, or if you're in person during the lesson. But first off, what is a short story? A short story is just a short work of prose fiction. Remember, during the poetry unit, we talked about prose a little bit at the very beginning. Prose is the exact opposite of poetry. It's your everyday writing, everyday talking. There's not really a set form to it. That's what differentiates prose from poetry. So prose doesn't have any, like I said, any set form. So short stories are generally easier to read than, say, poetry. At least it flows better for the vast majority of students. A short story can usually be read in one sitting, usually between 20 minutes to an hour, depending upon how long the short story is, yada yada yada. It is a lot shorter than a novel. I know you probably hear 20 minutes to an hour and you're like, that's really long. Well, whenever we get to the novel unit, y'all will understand. And a short story is typically between 1,000 and 7,500 words. It's all dependent upon the author, the plot, and other things that are just affected by the author. So, three main things to that. It's prose fiction. You can usually read it in one sitting, typically between 1,000 and 7,500 words. So that's what a short story is. So now let's go to the structure of a short story. We've been talking about the plot diagram for a little while now in class. I made a video last night kind of introducing you all to the different parts of it, but now I'm going to introduce you all to it with a little more in-depth detail. Sorry. So the first part of a short story, I should put this as 1A because the next one's 1B, but they're both considered one. So this is 1A. It's called the exposition. A lot of people call it the introduction, but go ahead and get familiarized with the term exposition. All the exposition does is it introduces three main things. It introduces the setting, which the setting doesn't only mean the place, it means the time and the place. So it introduces the setting. It introduces you to the characters of the short story, and it introduces you to the basic situations of the story. Maybe some background information you need to know to understand the story, to understand the climax, or to understand the plot, understand the conflict. So those are the three things that need to be taught or need to be relayed through the exposition or the introduction. The setting, the characters, and the basic situations of the story. So 1B is the narrative hook, or otherwise known as the conflict. So it's called the narrative hook / conflict because a lot of times it is the conflict. It's a conflict that draws your attention. So basically, a narrative hook is an event or events that sparks the reader's attention and introduces the central conflict of the story. It's kind of the big problem of the story. So that leads us to the rising action. This is the big line going up on the plot diagram. All the rising action is it's just actions which add complications to the plot and lead up to the climax. So remember, it's going up, so we're leading our way to the climax, and that's all it's doing is just adding some complications leading up to the climax. Then we get to the climax, or the turning point you see right here. And the climax is simply the highest point of intensity and emotional involvement in a short story or a story. The big problem that we talked about in the narrative hook / conflict is fixed. Not fixed, it's faced. I'm sorry. So the big problem is faced in the climax. They make a decision. It's the turning point. So that leads us, now we're going down on the plot diagram to the falling action. Now the falling action is it's just events that result from the climax. So, what kind of actions or what events happen because of the decision made in the climax and the turning point. And last is the resolution. Otherwise, you probably don't hear this terminology until later on in high school and further English classes, but the denouement. But for this, we're just going to call it the resolution. The resolution is just the outcome of the story in which the conflict is resolved. Remember, resolved resolution. That's how I always remember it, and I still do to this day. For those of you who are just wondering about the denouement, a lot of times the resolution can be considered like the very next to the last part of the story, whereas the denouement is the very last part, if that makes sense. If you can split it into two, the resolution happens right before the denouement. But like I said, you do not have to know the term denouement for my class or for the test. It's just good for y'all to go ahead and get introduced to that term. All right, so this is our last slide. I will attach a movie trailer to the Google Classroom post for today, along with this video. Was a Disney movie that almost everyone has watched. So for this video and for the class, we're going to do Finding Nemo. Like I said, I'll post the trailer to it in the Google Classroom. But the 5 parts of this story, which we're going to do this, or I'm going to kind of tell you all what I thought the plot diagram, the 5 parts of the plot diagram are to Finding Nemo. And you all can refer back to this whenever you all are doing it. It's kind of an example. So if I had to do it, so number 1, I'm throwing both the exposition and the narrative hook / conflict in together. So the characters that are introduced are Nemo, Nemo's dad, who's Marlin, and Nemo's mom, Dory. And the setting is obviously the ocean. And the hook or the conflict that brings us in is Nemo is taken by humans. So that's all I need to put for number 1. Just introduce the characters, which I did. Nemo, Marlin, and Dory. Introduce the setting, which I did, the ocean. And introduce the narrative hook / conflict, which I did, which Nemo is taken by humans. So that leads us to number 2, which is the rising action. Rising action of this is Marlin is devastated after Nemo is taken. So Nemo's taken and Marlin's playing out this, internal conflict within his mind. Oh no, my son's taken. Am I going to go get him? What am I going to do? Am I going to leave the comfort of my house, my habitat, and face all the predators out in the ocean to go find my son? And that's what leads us up to the climax, the highest point, which Marlin has to make that decision. That's the climax. Is Marlin finally decides, hey, I'm going to go face all the possible dangers to go get Nemo. And the climax is the decision. He decides to go get him. So that now the falling action is just what events led from or what events resulted from the climax. And the results were Marlin encounters all kinds of different things in the ocean going to find Nemo. He encounters Dory. He encounters sharks, sea monsters, a whale, jellyfish, and even turtles. Many, many actions occur because of his decision in the climax, which, remember, that's all the falling action is. It's results that stem from the decision in the climax. And that leads us to number 5, the resolution. So what happens at the end based off the climax, off the falling action? How are things resolved? Marlin finds Nemo. And that leads Marlin to being less afraid of, leaving his habitat, less afraid of, the predators in the sea. And it eventually leads to, at the very end, Marlin sends Nemo off to school. So, like I said, that's just a very quick rundown of how I would introduce the plot diagram to Finding Nemo. And granted, it's been Lord knows how long since I've watched that movie. So basically, let me go back through. We've went through all these slides 1 through 9. So after this video, I hope you have all these parts filled in. And I'm just hoping that this is going to be a study tool for you all. What I mean by that is, before the test, this will kind of introduce or refresh you all on different terminology. We will go through slides. Let's see. We'll go over that tomorrow, what slides we're going to do. But today we're just worrying about slides 1 through 9. And like I said, make sure you keep track of this, keep notes. Notes are going to look different for everybody. You know what you need to know. You know yourself, what terms I just said that maybe you're familiar with and you're not too familiar with. If you're really familiar with one thing and not familiar with the other thing, that might be different than someone else who might maybe put more notes in number 4 than number 6. You see what I'm saying? So that's what, so just make sure that you self-assess, you realize what you need to be refreshed on, or maybe what part of the short story structure you need to familiarize yourself with, and make sure you add those notes. Remember, as with always, you have any questions, concerns, anything, send me an email. My email is Kellan, KELLAN .jones@pulaski.kyschools.us. Like I said, I hope this makes sense. I hope you can understand me through my dialect. I can't listen to myself during these videos because I sound like a big old country hick. So I apologize. Like I said, any questions, troubles, concerns, please feel free to email me. Hope you all have a great day. Like I said, anything you need, shoot me an email. Thank you.